if you are not someone who goes to the gym, if you're not someone who enjoys the gym, stick around because this has carryover to every aspect of your life, which is why we're going to be talking about them today. So no matter who you are, really, there is value in this for you. Welcome to the Mindset Gym podcast, where we exercise your way of thinking to help unlock your hidden potential. I'm your host, Emily Irwin, a registered nurse and holistic nutritionist with a passion for all things health, fitness, and personal development. All right, let's get into it. Hello, and welcome back to the Mindset Gym podcast. I hope you're having an amazing start to your week. So today we are diving into maybe one of my favorite topics to talk about. If you know me, you know that this is very on brand for things that I like to talk about. I am going to be diving into some life lessons that I have learned from the gym. Now, if you are not someone who goes to the gym, if you are not someone who enjoys the gym, stick around because this has carryover to every aspect of your life, which is why we're going to be talking about them today. So no matter who you are, really, there is value in this for you. These are all lessons that I kind of unintentionally learned along my fitness journey that I have noticed have translated over into other aspects of my life. And so this is why we're diving into them today. We are not talking about going to the gym or working out. This just happens to be where I have gathered these lessons from. So I have been going to the gym consistently for quite a long time now, a little over 8 years. And the kind of lessons and mental gains that I got from doing this was not something that I actually expected. So when I first started going to the gym consistently, it was because my roommates in university encouraged me to do so. And shout out to them because they started me on a habit that I have stuck with for several years now. I ended up loving it quite a bit. But I didn't get into it for the life lessons. That really was not my goal, okay? I mean, let's call a spade a spade. I got in it for a slim waist and a fat ass, which I think a lot of us did. But along the way, I started to notice that I was learning a lot more than I had expected, and that the way that I was showing up in this one area was changing how I was showing up to other facets of my life, and I realized just how much carryover I was getting from this. So we'll just get right into it. I'll talk about each of the kind of key big points that I learned and key takeaways that I had and how this can kind of apply to the rest of your life. So the first thing that was probably one of my biggest takeaways from working out consistently, and we've talked about this in a previous episode as well, and it's the notion that failure is essential for growth. And so we talked about failure a couple episodes back, and we talked about kind of reframing our mindset around failure and using it as an opportunity for growth. And so this is very much where I picked up that lesson from. And I talked a little bit in the previous episode about how I had met with a personal trainer and she had kind of encouraged me to push myself a little bit more because I hadn't really been approaching failure as a constructive thing up until that point. I really hadn't been pushing myself. I'd been doing the same thing week to week and really hadn't come anywhere close to seeing what my upper limits were. And so reframing my mindset around growth and being able to approach that allowed me to reach new levels of progression that I don't think I ever would have otherwise. And this has a ton of carryover to anything that you do in your life, really. When we see people succeed at anything in life, I think it can be really easy for us to think that they have just attempted this thing one time and have just found this immense success right out of the gate. And that, I'm going to say more often than not, but I think really all of the time, that is not true. People who find massive success in anything, there is typically an entire string of failures leading up to that we are not privy to. And that's just the thing. In order for you to become really proficient at anything, really, you have to be willing to kind of show up and fail over and over and over again, because all of those failures give you a chance to learn something new. They give you a chance to adapt and come back a little bit better than you would have before. And so all those little bits of knowledge and proficiency and competency that you pick up along the way, that is what makes you maybe an expert in anything down the road. And so like we've talked about before, really start leaning into failure as kind of an essential stepping stone along your way in order to reach the growth that you want, because it really is such an important step that I think we often go out of our way to avoid, we often underappreciate, and we don't really realize how much value it is bringing to the table. There is so much growth in failure. So the second thing that I kind of learned and took away from my time at the gym is that this is kind of on the same vein as the first thing that we've talked about, but in order for you to get proficient at anything, you have to get comfortable with being a beginner. And so this kind of runs along the same line as being willing to accept failure, but I think a lot of us avoid doing things that we are not familiar with or comfortable with because we're afraid of looking stupid or looking like a beginner, looking like we don't know what we're doing. And this was very much my approach to working out, because it was all very new territory for me when I started out. I started going, like I said, with my roommates, and we would kind of work out together. And then shortly after that, I kind of strayed off and started working out more consistently on my own. And starting out on that journey when I was working out on my own, I was so nervous. The gym anxiety was real. And I really didn't feel comfortable. I didn't know what I was doing. And so oftentimes my approach would be to go in and just hop on one of the cardio machines, and I would just stay there for like a little over an hour, and I would just kill time there. I would people watch, do my thing. I wouldn't even go and stretch afterwards, because even just walking into the other half of the building freaked me out. I didn't feel like I really belonged there, and I didn't want to look like I didn't know what I was doing. And so my transition into like strength training more consistently, it was a really, really gradual approach, because I was so nervous and so hesitant to look like an idiot. I didn't want to look like I didn't know what I was doing. And so I very, very slowly kind of transitioned from doing purely cardio, and then I'd kind of work up a little bit of courage. I'd go over to one of the mats, maybe do a little bit of stretching, maybe do some sort of body weight exercise. And then months and months down the line, I would do maybe one exercise on a machine. Years down the line, I finally picked up a pair of dumbbells. But it was this really, really slow progress, because I was just so afraid of looking silly. Which, looking back on that now, is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I missed out on so much growth that I think I could have achieved a lot sooner had I been willing to just get out of my comfort zone and look like a beginner. And because, like, if you're starting anything new, you are a beginner. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no shame in that. Looking like a beginner is the first step to looking like an expert, right? You have to be willing to start somewhere. And so that was something that I really took away from that, because every time I was willing to push myself out of my comfort zone and look like I wasn't sure of myself or try something that I wasn't fully comfortable with, I ended up learning something, and I ended up getting a little bit better. And so all of these things that felt really uncomfortable and really unfamiliar to me, the more I did it, the more I kept showing up and doing those things, the easier it got. Right? And now, years down the road, I feel very comfortable and very in my element going into the weight section and working out with everybody else, because it's something that I've been willing to look silly doing, been willing to show up and find my footing along the way. But you have to be willing to start at square one to get there. So this, like I said, this applies to anything in life. This isn't just based on things in the gym. If there is anything that you want to pursue in life, you're going to have to look like a beginner. You're going to have to start somewhere, and that's not a shameful thing. That's not a bad thing. That's not something that you need to be afraid of approaching. Being a beginner at something opens up a door for so much knowledge and so much growth. So I think the next time that you are wanting to pursue something new in life, maybe it's going after a skill that you're not familiar with, or maybe it's applying for a job that you're not familiar with, anything that's really out of your comfort zone, anything that makes you feel like you are a beginner, lean into it. Instead of approaching it as this kind of negative thing that, you know, you're worried you're going to feel embarrassed doing, look at it as this wealth of knowledge that you are about to gain. It can really kind of flip the feelings from ones of fear to ones of excitement, because there is so much opportunity in looking like a beginner. You can learn so much along the way. So the next thing that I've learned is that progress is not linear. Okay. This was also a kind of, this was a big reality check for me, really, because I think when I started out strength training, especially, I kind of just thought that I would just progressively get better. Every week would be a little bit better, every workout would be a little bit better, and I thought my progression was just going to be this kind of sweet linear slope, and that's all it was going to be. And that's just not the case. Progress does not go in this kind of beautiful linear fashion. It is more of a up and down mess of a thing, but through all the ups and downs, you kind of gradually get a little bit better and better. And I remember the time that this became the most real for me was in May of last year. And so I had been strength training for maybe 5-ish years consistently at that point, and I was making decent progress. I was getting a little bit better kind of month to month, and I felt like I was on a bit of a kind of linear trajectory up until that point. And then I got injured. And I was working out and I was doing a dumbbell overhead press, and I kind of lost my stability at the top and I ended up dislocating my left shoulder. And it completely derailed my progress. So I was in a sling for a couple of weeks, and then I had to start kind of rehabbing my shoulder. There was a trainer at the gym that was nice enough to work with me, and he was a huge, huge help in kind of getting me back on my feet. But all of my progress had taken a massive hit at that point, and it was just such a mental hurdle for me to wrap my head around, to feel like I had made all of this progress and suddenly I was kind of back to square one in my head. Um, but that really isn't the case, because if I compare my square one truly to where I felt like I was after this injury, I'm coming at it with so much more knowledge and skill, and my ability to kind of get back to where I was is way better than it was before. And so you do pick up things along the way. There's no point where all of this stuff that you've gained and all of this knowledge that you've acquired is just going to become obsolete. So the more that you stick with any skill, really, there is going to be elements of that that improve your capacity to do it, and you're going to get better over time. But it is going to be an up and down progress. Anything in life is not just a smooth upward slope. You are going to have setbacks, you're going to have bumps in the road, but that doesn't mean that you've failed. That doesn't mean that everything you've done up until that point is for nothing, right? You have gained some things along the way that are going to help you keep progressing forward. And so I think any endeavor that you go after in life, don't expect it to be a linear progress. Expect those ups and downs, expect those bumps in the road, because it will make it a lot easier to just wrap your head around those obstacles when they do come your way, because you've trained yourself to be prepared. You've come into this endeavor expecting those setbacks and expecting those bumps in the road. And kind of going back to the first thing that we talked about, where, failure is an opportunity for growth, so are all these obstacles. So are all these kind of bumps and dips in the road. Every time you encounter something like that, that gives you an opportunity to pivot. It gives you an opportunity to approach things in a way that maybe you weren't willing to before. And so back to my example, when I was coming off of this injury and having to kind of step back into strength training in a way that I wasn't used to, I changed my approach quite a bit, and it taught me things like needing to prioritize mobility and stretching and not take those things for granted, and to warm up properly and to focus more on my form. And so because I had to kind of dial it back and start at this point afterwards, where I am today is better than where I was before this injury, because I have learned some extra things along the way. So all of those setbacks that you're going to face are a gift. They're going to give you something along the way that you maybe would not have gained otherwise. The next takeaway that I've gained from my time at the gym is that people are not judging you as much as you think they are. Again, this goes for everything in life. People are so wrapped up in their own bubble and their own perception of life and their own to-do list, their own stressors, their own perception of things. They are not worrying or judging you nearly as much as you think they are. And I think a really easy way to just kind of put this into perspective is just take anybody in your life, a friend, a family member, a coworker, and I want you to truly think about how often you are just sitting and judging this person and questioning all of their decisions and overthinking everything they've said in conversation. It's probably not all that often, is it? Being that that's the case, that's probably how other people think about you. They're probably not, overthinking and mulling over every single little thing that you did. So we stress way, way more than I think we need to about what other people are thinking about us and what they think about our actions. They're not worrying about it all that much. And this again was something I really had to wrap my head around. Not just working out at the gym, but also doing things like filming content at the gym, both of which brought me a massive amount of anxiety. They both made me super, super nervous because I figured people were going to judge me. I felt people were going to look down on me, maybe, think that I don't know what I'm doing, think that I'm doing something I shouldn't be. Like, there was just so many thoughts of what people were going to think and how they were going to treat me and all this nonsense. And that never really came to fruition. People were never judgmental. People were often not paying attention to what I was doing. They were focusing on their own goals and focusing on their own work. And being able to just kind of let go of that notion that, oh, people are watching me all the time, people are judging what I'm doing, it opens up your world so much and gives you so much more freedom to just go after the things that you want to do without letting the fear of people's judgment hold you back. You are judging yourself way more than any other person is ever judging you. It's never as bad as you think it is. So no matter what it is that you're wanting to go after in life, try to really make a conscious effort to let go of that fear of what people are going to think and how they're going to judge you, because it's really not as deep as you think it is. No one is going to judge you as harshly as you are judging yourself. The last takeaway that I have gained from this journey is the value in taking a step to appreciate how far you've come. I think sometimes we get caught up in this race of we have to be more, we have to do more, we have to make more money, we have to get more likes on social media, we have to look prettier than this person, we have to have more stuff than the person next door. We kind of get caught up in this race of I have to do more and more and more. And we often don't take any time to just look back and appreciate how far we have truly come, or look back on where we were years ago and the progress that we've made. And the way that this lesson kind of solidified for me in a really tangible way was taking photos and videos kind of along my fitness journey, because I have documentation, I have proof of where I was, let's say 5 years ago. And so I'll look back on photos and videos sometimes and think, oh my God, like I have made so much more progress than I give credit to day to day, which makes sense because we are with ourselves 24/7. Like, I see what I look like 24/7. I am with myself every single day. And so all those little changes, all those little moments of growth, they don't seem like a whole lot in the moment, and they don't even really register as this big thing when they happen. And so if you don't take any time to look back and see where you were years ago, you'll miss all those little changes. You'll miss all those little bits of growth. It'll just go right over your head, and you don't realize at all how much progress you've made. And so those moments where I've looked back on where I was years ago and really took the time to reflect on how I've progressed mentally and physically, I gained a whole new sense of appreciation for this journey and for what I'm doing that I never really had before. And again, this goes for anything. This goes for anything that you do in your life. You have probably missed a lot of the growth that you have done. And so here's an exercise I want you to do. I want you to just take a second and think about who you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Who was that person? What was their outlook on life? What were their habits like? How did you show up for things like your job? How did you interact with others? Take all of those little things about who you were in that period of time and compare it to who you are now. And chances are, when you really take the time to just reflect on those things, you're gonna catch a lot of little elements of growth that you probably haven't appreciated before. And it will create a whole new sense of pride for how far you have come when you really, really take the time to just reflect and appreciate all those little moments. And something I've found is that taking the time to appreciate that growth, it actually motivated me more to keep going. It made me more excited to keep showing up and keep doing the things that I know I need to do, because being able to see that I have made all this progress up until this point makes me think, oh my God, I can make even more progress. Like, if I've been able to do this much in the past, let's say 5 years, what can I do in the next 5? It opens up a whole new world of opportunity that I think sometimes we shut ourselves down to because we don't think that we have made any progress. We don't realize how far we've actually come. You've done a lot more than you think. All right, so that's what I've got for you today. Those are kind of my big takeaways that I have learned from my time at the gym that I have found really had a lot of carryover to my day-to-day life. And so if you are somebody who goes to the gym on a regular basis, these are lessons that you can kind of take into your fitness routine. But if not, these are lessons that you can just take into your day-to-day and apply to the things that you do on a regular basis. There is so much opportunity in being able to really grasp each of these concepts and implement them into your day-to-day. All right, so that's all for today. If you're still here, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks again for watching. If you like the show, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, leave a review, or share the show with a friend. Your support helps the show reach even more amazing people just like you, and it means the absolute world to me. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time at the Mindset Gym.